Welcome, folks, to this edition of the 700 Club. You know, back in 1932, America elected a president. We were in the midst of a terrible depression. Hundreds of people or thousands of people were out of work, bread lines, suffering, sorrow. And the country elected a overwhelming majority of Democrats to the Congress. So when President Franklin Roosevelt was sworn into office as president, he enjoyed a powerful, maybe 40 or 50 vote majority in the House and a 20 vote or so majority in the Senate. I mean, he just had everything. And he had a depression and the people clamoring for something. So he started something called the New Deal. And the first 100 days, it was a flurry of activity. They started all kinds of government programs. They had people out in the boonies trying to get ready. They had to bring electricity to the farmers and all the rest of it. And those 100 days were extraordinary. Well, we don't have anything like that. We've got a razor-thin majority in the Senate, a relatively small majority in the House for Donald Trump. He's just come in on a very narrow vote. And to start talking about the first 100 days and comparing to Roosevelt is insane. So we're not doing that. But nevertheless, everybody says, well, what did he do in the first 100 days? This is not the New Deal. It is not the depths of the Depression. It's none of those things. But now, so far, the president has started on plans to jumpstart the economy by cutting both taxes and government red tape. And his widely praised nominee, Judge Neil Gorsuch, has been confirmed to the Supreme Court. But what else has he done? Terry.
Well, Trump has also made a strong mark in foreign affairs with his missile strike on Syria and now needing to deal with a nuclear North Korea. Jennifer Wishon has the story from the White House.
Whether it's the subject of one of his many executive orders, Buy American, Hire American, actions to reconsider trade deals that benefit other countries at the expense of the U.S., or working to strengthen the military and the nation's position in the world. At 100 days in, President Donald Trump is working to live up to his campaign slogan, Make America Great Again.
From now on, it's going to be America first.
He seems to enjoy demonstrating his blue-collar bona fides, despite his billionaire status.
Did you ever think you'd see a president who knows how much concrete and rebar you can lay down in a single day?
He's outraged by the 70,000 U.S. factories that have closed, the once great American industries that have faded, and is particularly bothered by federal regulations he says strangle the economy.
You want to build a highway in the United States? These are some of the permits that you need.
Trump is changing that. For every new federal regulation, 2 existing ones must be eliminated. He's already created a legacy by elevating Justice Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. He reinstated the Mexico City policy, which keeps taxpayer dollars from funding abortions overseas. He signed legislation that removes a requirement that states spend tax money on Planned Parenthood. And he's surrounded himself with evangelical Christians and calls on them for advice. Members of his cabinet hold weekly Bible studies, and Trump tells CBN News he's relying on God now more than ever.
The office is so powerful that you need God even more.
He's also letting the world know that a strong America is back. He dropped the mother of all bombs on an ISIS tunnel network in Afghanistan, ordered cruise missiles launched against Syria, and is taking on what the White House sees as the greatest threat facing America, North Korea. As a businessman, Trump is used to taking unilateral action in the boardroom. As president, what's eluded him is a major victory in Congress. In the coming days, he'll ask the legislature to pass tax reform, a plan to massively rebuild the nation's infrastructure, and budget bills that allow him to rebuild the nation's military. Still, he's signed 28 bills into law, including 13 congressional review acts, which erase last-minute regulations issued by the Obama administration.
Quiet, quiet, quiet.
The president's relationship with the press often makes news.
I think that we have worked very hard to build a constructive relationship with the Trump White House.
And Mason says reporters are getting one of the things they want most.
I actually think the access has been quite good.
So for Trump, what's different about being president after decades in business? He says that since everything a president does affects people, you have to show heart. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Well, with us now from Washington is our CBN News political correspondent, David Brody. David, I know it's a mistake to compare anybody to Franklin Roosevelt during the depth of the Depression, but how does the White House view these first 100 days?
Well, they put out a long, exhaustive list of saying everything is peachy keen and everything's just wonderful. But here's part of the problem with that, Pat. You've got the media out there saying 100 days, 100 days, 100 days, and so there is a belief inside the White House that they want to play that game as well. They understand that the headlines are going to be about 100 days, and so they feel compelled to play along, if you will. But they also understand that, look, this is going to be a long slog through when it comes to taxes and health care reform, and they understand there's a lot of work to be done. But they believe that President Trump, with that executive order pen, has been doing very well. I think right now they understand that he has to learn a little bit more of the legislative art of the deal. He's got the executive order art of the deal down just fine.
All right, the two big things that could symbolize his presidency, tax reform and health care reform, repeal, replace. How do you think any of them are going? There was some talk about actually doing that health care thing before the week was out. Is there any possibility of that?
Not going to happen this week, possibly next week, but here's the bottom line. They've got 17 no votes from the Republicans on this health care bill already, 17 hard no's. They can only afford 22 or they're going to lose. And so they've got about 10 to 20 or so folks leaning no. This is all in the Republican caucus. So they've got problems with this health care bill still. And remember, Mark Meadows and the Freedom Caucus and all those folks, they've come to an agreement with the White House. They've washed their hands of the whole thing. They say, look, we've done our job. We've got an agreement with the White House. Now it's on the Tuesday group, that was moderate Republicans, to come through on health care for the Republicans. And right now, that's not happening. And I think what we're finding out, Pat, is that we hear a repeal and replace Obamacare, which sounds great to the base, and the base wants it, and the conservative Freedom Caucus wants it. The White House wants it. Here's the problem. Moderate Republicans, dirty little secret, don't really want it because you're taking an entitlement away from folks in their districts, and they're more concerned about losing power than repealing and replacing Obamacare. So that's a big problem in health care. And then taxes is a whole nother kit and caboodle, if you will. And the sense on taxes, though, is that there will be something done by the end of the year. I would not expect this to be done at all by the end of August. I think they're going to take their time on this, and I'm thinking by the end of the year, Pat.
All right. Well, the game they play is kick the can down the road. They've got this budget thing coming up. You've got to have a balanced budget, and they have to do all this other. Are they going to have a continuing resolution to keep the government open?
They will. In essence, it's become politics as usual for now up here. It's a one-week continuing resolution, most likely being signed later today in the House and Senate, Friday, Saturday. It could just be a roll call vote. So, yes, we're looking at 1 week, and guess what? Maybe we'll do another live shot, Pat, next week, talking about a government shutdown, because that's all it lasts, 1 week.
Okay. Now, he had 100 senators together, buses wheeled up to the executive office building to talk about North Korea. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's a big deal, Pat, and it's been a big deal since day one. You know, President Obama told President Trump that the #1 issue in the entire world, you know, we got ISIS, we got all that, North Korea. That's what he told the president. And I can tell you that Jennifer Wishon and I have been in meetings with senior administration officials who say North Korea is the big one. This is the one they're most concerned about. They've been concerned about it since day one. One senior administration official telling both of us at the time that, look, this is a crazy guy. That's a quote. This is a crazy guy with nuclear weapons. This is a major problem. So what you're hearing today relating to North Korea, and that President Trump says there could be a major strike or some sort of major conflict with North Korea, is very real, more than very real, Pat.
David, we've moved up a nuclear submarine with all kinds of missile capability, as well as a flotilla of naval ships. Is that going to be enough to deter that crazy man in North Korea, do you think?
Oh, probably not. And part of the reason for that is if you talk to Pentagon experts and some military experts, they'll say, look, they can't shoot down some of what's coming from North Korea potentially there. So there's some actual logistical problems. It's a show of strength for sure that America is doing what they're doing over there in that region. But the reality is some of what they have cannot, from those Navy ships, actually shoot some of those missiles down. So there's going to be some issues as it relates to that from a military perspective.
Last question. Gorsuch was a real win for Trump. He's a great man. He's one of the most qualified candidates we've ever had for the Supreme Court. Any talk of some of the other justices stepping down?
There is anticipation that there will be a Supreme Court nomination again this summer. There's a sense that Anthony Kennedy will be the one to step down. He's 80 years old. And, of course, that Neil Gorsuch pick, as we've talked about before, Neil Gorsuch, as you know, clerked for Anthony Kennedy. And that was a sign, I think, by the White House to say to Anthony Kennedy, hey, you're in good hands with Allstate, or at least with Donald Trump, to say, you're going to be okay if you step down. We're going to be just fine picking someone new. And so the anticipation is that Anthony Kennedy will leave this summer. If that is the case, some of the names, Brett Kavanaugh is out there, Dianne Sykes, if it's going to be a female, though the sense is Ruth Bader Ginsburg, if she decides to retire, and I don't see that happening based on the fact that she's not the biggest Donald Trump fan in the world, but Dianne Sykes might be a possibility. And then there's Thomas Hardiman on the Third Circuit. Thomas Hardiman coming approved by Donald Trump's sister, Marianne, who also sits on that Third Circuit. So those are three to definitely watch out for this summer.
Okay, well, we'll look at that. And a simple majority is all it's going to take to confirm. They have done the nuclear option. The Democrats voted on themselves.
Well, and I just want to say, Pat, real quick, everybody's talking about, oh, this is going to be the big fight if Anthony Kennedy leaves. No, it won't be a big fight. You're right. They've gone nuclear. It's over. 51, and they're done. The only thing they'd have to be concerned about, the White House, that is if some of those moderate Republicans, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, decide to go off the reservation. Then they're at 49, and then that becomes a problem.
David, thank you very much. David Brody, ladies and gentlemen. We've got some more coming up.